Welcome to this deep dive. We're sorting through a stack of sources on some really fast-moving global events.
Yeah, lots happening. Our goal here is just to pull out the key information for you.
Exactly. We've got updates from Ukraine, international reactions, an incident with an activist, U.S. health policy changes.
And even a thread linking U.S. domestic politics back to some of these global hotspots. It's quite interconnected.
Okay, let's start with Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry reported long-range strikes.
Right. They specified targets in Kyiv missile, aircraft, tank facilities, shipbuilding too, I think.
They claimed the goals were met, targets hit, and importantly, they asserted these strikes only target military facilities.
But then you look at the reports from Ukrainian officials.
Yeah.
A very different picture.
Totally different. They reported strikes hitting Kyiv and the Odessa region.
And the damage they described in Kyiv, non-residential buildings, a business center, not exactly purely military.
And crucially, casualties.
Yeah.
2 killed, 13 injured reported, plus nearly 20 fires.
President Zelensky apparently called it one of the largest strikes, mentioning, what was it, over 300 drones and several missiles.
So quite the contrast there. And this all comes after an increase in Ukrainian drone strikes inside Russia.
Which Moscow labeled terrorist attempts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Targeting railways, air bases, some reportedly hosting nuclear-capable bombers.
Adds context. What about talks? Any movement there mentioned in the sources?
Well, Russia's delegation, led by Medinsky, says they're ready. They've exchanged memoranda with Ukraine's team.
Okay.
But Moscow apparently called Ukraine's request to see their draft memo beforehand unconstructive. So maybe a bit of friction there.
And Putin?
Reportedly open to high-level talks, but, only after these delegation-level results.
Right. Okay, let's widen the lens. Geopolitics. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte had some strong words for the UK.
He did, urging a significant boost in defense spending, referencing Prime Minister Starmer's plan.
His warning sounded pretty stark. Something about new Russian missiles.
Yeah, he warned they could reach European capitals quickly, and reportedly said the UK had better learn to speak Russian if spending isn't increased. Quite blunt.
Wow. He praised Starmer's plan for 3% GDP on defense, but noted there wasn't a deadline yet.
And Russia's response to these kinds of invasion fears, they've dismissed it as nonsense, basically.
Adding more tension, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov reportedly claimed the UK is 100% helping Kyiv with attacks inside Russia.
That's a strong accusation, and it ties into speculation we saw about wider involvement in those Ukrainian drone strikes on Russian airfields.
Yeah, the White House denied President Trump was informed beforehand.
But some analysis in the sources suggest that, well, operations that complex likely needed some NATO or U.S. help, technically speaking.
Raises questions. And the Kerch Bridge came up again, too.
Ukraine's SBU reportedly claimed responsibility for a recent attack. Russia calls any attack on that bridge, civilian infrastructure, terrorist. Previous attacks did kill civilians, remember.
Okay, now the U.S. political angle starts weaving in. President Trump spoke with Putin.
Reportedly, yes. About the airfield attack response and also Iran.
And there are these reports suggesting Zelensky might meet Trump in D.C., possibly with figures like Keith Kellogg, described as neocons.
Yeah, to discuss next steps, maybe even green-lighting tourist missiles.
Yeah.
And Zelensky apparently mentioned wanting to buy weapons with U.S. money, not just receive them as a gift. Interesting framing.
And related to that, U.S. Defense Secretary Hegseth is skipping a Ukraine contact group meeting.
Some sources are reading that as maybe Trump trying to put some distance between his administration and Project Ukraine, as they called it.
Okay, switching gears completely now. Greta Thunberg.
Yes, the Swedish activist. She was deported from Israel after being detained on a vessel, the Madeleine, heading towards Gaza.
In international waters, the sources said, 4 activists, including her, agreed to leave. 8 others were detained.
And thankfully, unlike that 2010 flotilla incident, no injuries reported this time. The mission was challenging Israel's naval blockade of Gaza,
Which has been in place since 2007, and this happened amidst the ongoing Israeli operations in Gaza.
Operations critics have called excessively violent. The Israeli defense minister, Katz, reportedly said they tried showing the detainees a documentary about the Hamas attack, but they declined. He called them anti-Semitic flotilla members.
Thunberg, who's been vocal for the Palestinian cause, urged Sweden to denounce the detention as a kidnapping.
Though the Swedish foreign minister stated the activists weren't in danger. Different perspectives, clearly.
All right, now a U.S. policy shift. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the ACIP.
Big move. He dismissed all members of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. That's the group advising on vaccine policy.
His reasoning. He cited reports pointing to conflicts of interest, persecution of dissidents, skewed science, referencing older reports about financial ties to pharma companies.
Said he wanted a clean slate, arguing the problem was industry-aligned incentives.
What was the reaction?
Pretty strong pushback. Former CDC directors criticized it heavily. One said it spreads confusion, another that it shows he intends to impose his personal anti-vaccine agenda.
He's often labeled an anti-vaxxer.
Right, though Kennedy maintained his decisions would be science-driven and warned against blaming trust issues only on misinformation. The sources also noted 8 recent ACIP appointments were made right at the end of the previous administration.
Okay, final piece. Connecting back to U.S. domestic politics. President Trump's big, beautiful bill, the BBB.
That huge spending package, $1.6 trillion, passed the House, now in the Senate. Lots of money for the military-industrial complex and pharma in there.
It's drawn criticism for the cost and debt from figures like Elon Musk, Rand Paul.
Though Trump has defended it. But here's the potential link the sources raise. Speculation connecting the push for this bill to pressure from figures like Senator Lindsey Graham.
Pressure to do what?
To align U.S. policy towards, well, escalation with Russia, maybe China too. Graham's reported influence, his frequent trips to Kyiv.
High-cost trips mentioned too.
Exactly. Some sources speculate he might be using support for the BBB as leverage to push foreign policy goals, like more support for Ukraine, maybe getting those Taurus missiles approved.
So it really paints a picture of how domestic spending fights could be tangled up with global strategy.
It absolutely underscores that complex interplay. Things are rarely just about one issue.
So as you listen to this whirlwind tour of events and claims, what really jumps out to you?
And maybe think about this. If domestic political battles, like over these huge spending bills, really are influencing global conflict strategies, as some sources suggest, how does that change how we understand what's driving world events? Something to chew on.